Good evening and welcome to 15 Minutes with Longevity. My name is Giselle Wertheim-Ames and I'll be your host this evening for your weekly dose of health news. Tonight we're speaking to Neshika Bell, a science of happiness at work coach and a dream liberator. And she's going to tell us why it's so important to love what you do and how to find happiness and balance in the workplace, as well as at home. Well, first of all, I've never heard about a person who's a dream builder. I mean, I've heard the word dream builder, but you have to tell me what that means.
In essence, I help people to liberate their true dreams. I work with people who have a deep longing to do something that means something to them, something that matters, and we work together to make it happen.
Okay, well, that's one for the book. So we've got the medical doctors and the dream liberators. So we're going to talk about happiness today. And I mean, it's become such a buzzword, this whole thing of finding happiness at work, and you have to be happy. And if you're not happy, then there's almost like there's something wrong with you. So can we just talk about that? Why is there so much focus now these days on being happy at work?
Well, I think it's become a buzzword because more and more companies are realizing that happiness is driving performance in the workplace, and unhappy people are less productive, they are less of team players, and they just generally don't contribute towards any kind of cohesion when it comes to living towards a vision.
Okay, but is it really a company's responsibility to make sure that their staff are happy? I mean, surely it's your responsibility as a person to be happy. It's not also just about the workplace. Surely it's about life in general.
Yeah, it's twofold. And with the science of happiness at work, we talk about 3 different types of happiness. So you've got trait happiness, which is kind of your long-term, over your lifetime, a stable sense of happiness. And I think there's a statistic that says that's about 50% of that is predetermined through genetics.
Oh, really? So you could be just born a happy,
so you could just
unhappy
be born
person
really
or a happy
unhappy
person.
Exactly.
That's very interesting.
And the other 50% is entirely up to you.
Okay.
So then we talk about either emotional happiness, which is like short bursts of positive emotion, and those are kind of feelings, but they're not very long lasting. The kind of happiness that we talk about in the workplace is mindset happiness, and that's relatively stable, and it's very sensitive to change and is affected by changes in behavior in the workplace. So absolutely, it is entirely up to an individual to be responsible for their own happiness, and it's up to the company. So we talk about it being kind of a two-way street, because they do feed back into each other. If you're happy at your company and your company is happy with you, it's kind of a happy balance.
Okay, so are South African businesses really embracing this? I mean, again, we speak about it as a trend, and we're seeing a lot of it, but when we look at South African business, do we see companies embracing this whole concept? Because it sounds quite ethereal, it's not tangible.
Well, yeah, there has been that aspect of it. So happiness, the H word, it's fluffy. It's like using love in the workplace. Before it hasn't been very tangible. But what specifically with the work that I do with the science of happiness at work, they've made it very concrete, very tangible. There's specific drivers that drive your happiness in the workplace.
What might those be?
So, for instance, if we look at it as like an M&M in a sense, at the middle of it, you've got at the heart is an individual achieving their potential, and then encompassing that, you've got these 5 drivers, which are the 5 C's. So things like contribution to what is the effort that you make at work, your level of confidence and belief in what you do and how you do it, how you fit your culture. What else is there? Short-term motivation, that kind of thing. So those are the drivers, and then those are kind of what we look at as the inside out. So as an individual, what I bring to the company and what I can control. And then if you look at it from the company, so the outside into the individual, there's pride, there's recognition, there's trust.
What about money?
Well, surprisingly enough, if you are happy at work and all of those factors are working in harmony, money doesn't seem to be much of a factor.
Really? Is that what the research is saying?
That's what the research says. Money becomes a factor when something else is not working.
Well, that's very interesting. Okay, so let's just talking about happiness and the relationship of happiness to one's physical health. Are there any indications that there's a link between the two?
So from my opinion, absolutely there is. When you're happy, it's endorphins. It's positive. Happiness is like an energy. And when there's positive energy in your body, physically you feel better, you're more energized, and there is research to prove that people who are happier are more energized. When you're unhappy, you're in a really miserable kind of resigned place. And then what starts to happen is your body will start to take that energy and use it, and you fall into a slump in a sense. So you kind of your energy gets depleted, and then when you start feeling unhappy or miserable at work, that starts to feed into other aspects of your life, and then your energy gets depleted in other areas, which means you're not functioning at optimum levels.
Okay. So I think that there are detractors of this theory of happiness who say that happiness it's an artificial concept. People are not going to be happy all the time. You are going to have unhappiness. It's just like the concept of a work-life balance. A lot of people say it just doesn't exist. You will have the seesaws of life. So how do we manage that again, the expectations? Because when there's all this talk about everyone's got to be happy to be productive, then doesn't it send the message that actually if you're not that, then there's something wrong with you? Which is not really realistic, is it? Because we're all going to be unhappy at some point in our lives.
Absolutely. And it's nothing works in isolation. So you can't, if something's impacting you at home or outside of the workplace, chances are you'll bring that into the workspace too. What I think, so let's address this concept of happiness, because I think it means different things to different people. And when I speak about happiness in the context of work, I'm talking about that mindset happiness, which is absolutely under your control. So it's looking at what in my environment is not working and what can I do to fix it. Obviously, there are aspects of a job that not everyone is going to love all the time. And then there are aspects of it that you absolutely adore. And those are the things that you really kind of go to work and get up for in the mornings to do. So it's about finding what is it that I love about my job and how can I get to do more of that? And what is it that I don't like about my job? And how can I make it such that I do less of that?
Or you manage it better.
Or you manage it better.
Have you had any insight? I know you work with an international agency that monitors happiness around the world. Do we have any insight into how South Africans stack up in terms of a happiness index?
It's an ongoing process, and the Science of Happiness at Work has recently come into South Africa. So those are stats that are still under review. What I can say is that we fare a lot better, actually, than a lot of people around the world. If we compare us to the States and to the UK, our indicators are much higher. And we don't yet know why, and we're still looking into it. I think one of the main factors, though, is South Africans do have a lot more resilience. We've been through
resilience
so
and happiness.
many.
There is a link between that. I understand.
Yeah.
That the more resilient you are, the potentially happier you can be.
Absolutely.
And I think especially in these current times, which are quite economically pressured, do we adapt different types of strategies towards our own happiness in these kind of times when we're under pressure economically, psychologically? There's a lot of doomsday information out there.
Yes. And I think given as South Africans, our history and where we've come from, that resilience seems to be an innate driver. We seem to just have it. It comes naturally. And so that's the kind of stuff that we draw on. We talk about psychological capital, which is the stuff that you draw on when times are really tough. Things like confidence, things like resilience, things like self-belief, things like motivation. All of those are innate things that we have, and when times are tough, those are the things that we need to draw on, because it's that thing about knowing that you'll get through it.
If there are quick 2 or 3 tips that you would give to someone about how they can improve their outlook, happiness, their own personal happiness index, what would they be?
Okay, so first and foremost, find what it is that you love to do and do more of that. One of my favorite authors, her name is Danielle Laporte. She talks about doing more of what you love and less of what you don't until your ideal becomes your everyday. So it's not a case of going out and going, well, I'm not doing anything that I don't love at work anymore and I'm only focusing on what I do want. It's a process of getting to that stage. So absolutely, look at what you love, look at what you don't, and see where can I delegate the stuff that I'm not good at, and where can I take on more of the stuff that really, really makes me soar. Look at your strengths. What are your innate strengths and capabilities, and focus on that zone.
Well, that's it for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Please tune in next week when we'll be looking at mental health illnesses and how these affect one's day-to-day functioning. keep healthy, and we'll see you again here next week.